born to glow. How much did that cost?
I know, but look at her skin.
Welcome to the clinic, ladies.
Avery Collins bolted upright in bed, her hands already clutching her face before her mind fully caught up. The room was dark and quiet, but her body was loud, heart-hammering, breath-sharp, a pulse of heat radiating behind her eyelids like a warning flare. She tried to blink to soothe the sting, but the pain didn't move. It stayed. It grew. It felt like sand, ground into her eyes like a thin layer of glass scraping the surface every time she dared to close them. She swung her legs over the side of the bed and stumbled toward the bathroom barefoot on cold hardwood, one hand braced against the wall. Her phone lit up on the nightstand behind her, another notification, another vibration, but she ignored it, moving as if she was being pulled by a string. The mirror could tell her what her body already knew: something was wrong. She flicked on the bathroom light and the brightness hit her like a slap. For a fraction of a second, she couldn't see anything but white. When her vision adjusted, her stomach dropped so fast she thought she might vomit. Her eyelids were swollen purple and bruised, stretched tight and glossy the way skin looked before it cracked. Fine stitches traced the fold of each lid, angry red lines biting into flesh that looked too delicate for what it had endured. And beneath all that swelling, beneath the bruising and ointment shine, was the thing she couldn't understand. Her eyes wouldn't close. Avery stared into her own reflection and tried again, forcing her lids down with every muscle she had. They trembled, fluttering like they were trying to obey, but the center remained open, just a thin sliver of exposed eye that refused to disappear. Her lashes shook. Her face strained. The opening stayed. "No," she whispered. The word sounded small in the sterile brightness. She reached up and pressed her fingertips lightly to the swelling. Even that gentle touch sent a hot bolt of pain through her skull. She opened her eyes fully and leaned closer to the mirror. Her corneas were red, the whites streaked with broken vessels like a cracked windshield. Tears pooled and spilled, but they didn't bring relief. They only smeared the discomfort, making everything burn and blur. A thin line of pale yellow fluid had dried near the outer corner of her left eye, mixed with blood that had seeped through the edge of the stitches. Avery's throat tightened. Her chest rose and fell too fast. She tried to inhale slowly the way she'd taught herself on live streams when anxiety hit, but the panic didn't care about coping skills. Her eyes, she couldn't close them. She couldn't rest. She couldn't hide. She couldn't even blink properly. And then her phone buzzed again insistently, like the world didn't know her body was breaking. She turned her head, still staring at herself in the mirror, and saw the phone's reflection on the marble counter. The screen glowed with TikTok's familiar icon and a flood of notifications stacking like waves. "Your video is trending. Your video is trending. Your video is trending." Avery's lips parted, but no sound came out. She looked at her eyes again, really looked, and a strange thought cut through the panic like a blade. She had wanted people to look at her. She had wanted eyes. Now her own wouldn't shut. The digital clock on her microwave read 3:12 a.m. The number felt sharp like a timestamp on a crime scene. Avery stood there under the bathroom lights with her face swollen and her vision blurred and her heart breaking open, and she didn't yet know that what had started as a beauty decision wasn't just painful. It was irreversible. A week earlier, her life had looked like light. The morning sun in West Hollywood always hit her apartment at the perfect angle, pouring through sheer curtains like something designed for content. Avery had built her career on that kind of light, the kind that made skin look soft and eyes look bright, and coffee steam curl like art. Her camera sat on its tripod in the corner of her bedroom ring light, resting like a halo on the floor beside it. It was all ready, always ready, because that was the rule. If you weren't posting, you were fading. She sat at her vanity and tapped concealer under her eyes with her ring finger, watching herself in the mirror like she was both artist and canvas. Her lashes were bare, her lips still pale from sleep, but her face had the familiarity of a brand. She knew exactly how to angle her chin, how to soften her mouth into a smile that looked effortless instead of practiced. Sienna Reyes stood behind her with a laptop open and a look that had nothing to do with makeup. "You're down again," Sienna said. Avery didn't look up. What do you mean down? Sienna turned the screen slightly so Avery could see the line graph sloping in a way that felt personal. Views had dipped. Engagement was falling. Her last 3 videos had performed like shadows of what they used to. It's the 3rd week in a row, Sienna said. She tried to keep her tone neutral, but there was a tension under it, the kind that came when you were telling your friend a truth you didn't want to admit. Avery dabbed again under her eye a little too hard. It's just the algorithm. It fluctuates. That's what you said last week. Avery's jaw tightened. She blended her concealer in silence, turning her face slightly to catch the light. In the mirror, she looked the same as she always had. Fresh, pretty, safe. But the numbers on Sienna's screen didn't care about safe. Maybe people are just bored, Avery said finally, but her voice didn't sound like she believed it. Sienna watched her. They're not bored. They're shifting. Avery frowned, shifting to what Sienna sighed. She leaned against the doorframe like she was bracing for impact. It's all fox eye and cat eye now. Sharp liner, lifted lids. That whole snatched thing. Avery's hand paused. Her eyes moved to her reflection, to her natural monolid shape that had once been her signature. It had been her story, the girl who kept her face real, the influencer who didn't chase every trend. She'd made videos about loving your features, about not needing surgery to be confident. She'd said the words with conviction. She'd believed them. But now the comments were changing. She had seen them even when she pretended she hadn't. Little knives dressed as advice. You're gorgeous, but your eyes look tired lately. Have you ever thought about getting your lids done? Monolids are cute, but double lids make makeup pop more. Avery told herself she didn't care. Told herself she was above it. But the truth lived somewhere in her chest, coiled and hot. She cared. She cared because caring was her job. Caring was the difference between being invited to a brand trip and being forgotten. That afternoon, she filmed a soft glow winter makeup routine, the same kind of gentle look her followers used to love. She talked about skincare, showed her favorite cream blush, laughed at herself when she dropped a brush. She posted it with a cute caption and waited. It got half the views. The comments were polite but flat. Hearts without excitement. Compliments without obsession. No reposts. No, where did you get that? No, brand DMs sliding in like they used to. Avery lay on her couch later that night and scrolled TikTok until her thumb went numb. Video after video was the same kind of face. Lifted eyes, sharp corners, lids that folded perfectly when they blinked. The girls looked like dolls made for the camera. Their makeup looked effortless because their eyes had been sculpted to hold it. A trending sound played beneath a clip of a girl pointing at her face. You're not ugly, the girl mouthed. You're just broke. Avery laughed once the sound bit her in her throat. She kept scrolling. She kept watching. She kept absorbing. And somewhere between the 7th before and after and the 10th. I did this on my lunch break story. Something shifted inside her. She opened her own camera and tried the filter. The transformation was immediate. Her lids lifted. A crease appeared. Her eyes looked bigger, sharper, more awake. She tilted her head, smiled, blinked. It was ridiculous. It was perfect. She filmed a quick reaction video, just a joke, just for fun. She posted it without thinking too much. Her phone buzzed 5 minutes later. Then again. Likes poured in like adrenaline. The comment section exploded. Wait, why does this suit you so much, girl? You need to make this your look. Okay, but you look expensive now. What did you do? Your eyes look insane. Avery stared at the screen, her pulse rising with every notification. In her front-facing camera, the filtered version of her looked like the kind of girl who got invited to brand panels and sat in the front row at Sephora events. The kind of girl the algorithm loved. Avery turned her head slowly toward Sienna, who was sitting on the floor beside the couch editing a sponsored post for another client. What if I got it done? Avery asked. Sienna froze her fingers still on the keyboard. What Avery's smile was too quick, too forced. Like, just a little. Just my lids. Everyone does it now. Sienna's expression sharpened. You mean because a filter blew up? Avery opened her mouth, then closed it. She didn't want to say the truth out loud because then it would sound like what it was, desperation. Sienna shook her head slowly. Avery. You built your whole thing on being natural, Avery swallowed. The room felt smaller suddenly, like the walls were leaning in. She glanced at her phone again and saw the view count rising, the algorithm handing her a hit of relevance like a drug. Exactly, Avery said quietly. Sienna stared at her. Exactly what Avery's voice hardened, like she was trying to convince herself more than Sienna. And now, that's not enough. She didn't tell Sienna that she already had an ad saved on Instagram, that she'd clicked it twice watching the clinic's reels loop again and again, that at 2 a.m. she'd typed her credit card numbers into a form and selected a slot marked High Demand. She didn't tell Evan. Not yet. She just stared at her filtered eyes at the version of herself that looked like a trend instead of a person and whispered into her phone camera like she was telling a secret to millions of strangers. Big upgrade coming soon. And somewhere deep inside her, a quieter voice tried to speak up. The voice that said, you don't know who's holding the blade. You don't know what they'll take. You don't know how fast you can lose everything. Avery ignored it. Because the views were up. Because the internet was watching. Because she thought that was the same thing as being safe. Avery didn't sleep the night before the appointment. She told herself it was excitement, the kind that came before a brand trip or a big launch, but the truth was closer to hunger. She lay in bed, scrolling past endless before and afters until her eyes burned from the screen glow, telling herself she was researching. She clicked on testimonials, zoomed in on captions, watched influencers with perfect lighting and perfect smiles say the same words in slightly different voices. So quick, so easy, so subtle. Best decision ever. Eclipse Aesthetics was everywhere, like an algorithm had wrapped its hands around her throat and decided where she would go next. Every third post on her Explore page featured their logo. Every time she tried to scroll away, another reel appeared, soft jazz audio. A surgeon's gloved hands, a woman opening her eyes to reveal a lifted lid, and a stunned smile. The clinic's feed looked less like medicine and more like a lifestyle brand. Marble countertops, white roses, champagne flutes, a neon sign that read, "You were born to glow." At 2:04 a.m., Avery tapped Book Now. For the final time, as if she was sealing a pact with the person she was becoming. The next afternoon, she stepped into an Uber Black, wearing oversized sunglasses and a hoodie pulled tight at the neck. She told herself she looked casual, anonymous. But her stomach was doing something else entirely, tightening and loosening in waves like her body understood what her mind refused to admit. Sienna sat beside her in the car, phone in hand, scrolling with a face that looked like she was tracking a storm. "You're sure about this?" Sienna asked. Avery kept her gaze forward. Sunset Boulevard slid past the window like a postcard. It's literally the most reputable place in Beverly Hills. That's what their Instagram says. Avery's jaw tightened. They have celebrities tagged? So do pyramid schemes, Sienna muttered. Avery shot her a look, but Sienna didn't flinch. She had that kind of stubborn, grounded energy that Avery used to admire back when being grounded didn't feel like a disadvantage. The Uber turned onto Wilshire, and Avery's phone vibrated in her lap. Another DM. "Where'd you get that eyelid look?" "You looked insane." Avery's fingers hovered over the screen. She could almost feel the dopamine before it hit. She could almost hear the imagined comments after the real upgrade. She tucked the phone away and pressed her palms together like a prayer she didn't believe in. When the car pulled up, Avery's first thought was that the building looked too clean. It was the kind of white that didn't exist naturally. A gleaming, modern structure tucked between a designer eyewear boutique and an impossibly quiet sushi bar. A silver sign on the sidewalk read, "Eclipse Aesthetics," and beneath it, in smaller letters, "Redefining beauty, one face at a time." Even the air smelled curated like expensive flowers and sanitized optimism. A valet opened the door before Avery could touch the handle. He wore a black suit and a smile that said he'd been trained to make nervous people feel important. "Welcome, Ms. Collins," he said, as if her name alone belonged here. Avery paused. "How do you—" "We're expecting you," he replied smoothly, and Avery felt a flicker of pride she didn't want to acknowledge. She was used to being recognized online, but being recognized in real life by a luxury clinic in Beverly Hills felt like confirmation. Inside the lobby could have been mistaken for a boutique hotel. Soft blush walls, gold accents, velvet chairs. A marble reception desk with a bowl of chilled bottled water lined up like offerings. A diffuser sent mist into the air that smelled like coconut and something darker beneath it, something medicinal. A giant screen on the wall played a loop of footage lips being injected, jaws being sculpted, eyelids being lifted. Side-by-side transformations flickered like magic tricks. Women laughed and posed in the exact same lighting, holding their phones like trophies. Avery felt the muscles in her shoulders tighten. She could almost hear the unspoken thoughts in the room bouncing off the polished surfaces like sound in an empty cathedral. Be prettier, be smoother, be younger, don't mess up. The receptionist looked up and smiled. Her skin was flawless in a way that seemed engineered, not earned. Nude lipstick, perfect lashes, the kind of face that made Avery suddenly aware of every pore she'd ever had. "Avery Collins," the receptionist asked brightly like she was greeting a friend. Avery nodded. "I'm here for the Fox Eye lift." She stopped herself, recalibrating the term to sound safer. The upper lid procedure. "Perfect," the receptionist said. "We have you down for 2:30. Would you like coconut water or a matcha?" Avery blinked. "Coconut water is fine." Sienna leaned closer to Avery's ear. "This is a medical facility, not Arrowhawn." Avery ignored her. The receptionist handed Avery a clipboard with forms. The first page was covered in small print liability waivers, consent agreements, legal language so dense it might as well have been written in another language. Avery stared at it for a moment, her stomach dropping. Sienna shifted beside her. "Read it," she swallowed. "I will." But her eyes skimmed instead of reading. She saw phrases like possible complications, asymmetry infection, dryness, vision changes, and her brain turned them into background noise. It felt impossible that something like this could happen to her. She wasn't careless. She wasn't reckless. She was doing what everyone did now. She signed her name anyway. When the receptionist returned, Avery handed the clipboard back quickly, as if giving herself too much time would make her reconsider. "Great," the receptionist chirped. "So, Dr. Wolf will come in first to do mapping and supervise your procedure." Avery's chest loosened slightly at the mention of his name. Dr. Harrison Wolf was the reason she'd chosen this place. He was the face behind the brand, the celebrity surgeon whose videos were stitched and duetted by half of TikTok. The man with the calm voice and the perfect hairline who spoke about facial harmony like it was poetry. Then the receptionist added almost casually, "Your procedure today will be performed by Brittany Shaw. She's one of our top surgical associates." Avery's pen slipped slightly in her hand. "Associates." The receptionist's smile didn't change. It stayed fixed, polished. "Yes, Brittany is incredible. She has completed hundreds of hours of advanced training and specializes in achieving that subtle, lifted look." Avery felt a cold prick under her ribs. She glanced at Sienna, who raised her eyebrows sharply as if to say, "Oh, monsieur. That's your sign. So Dr. Wolf isn't doing it?" Avery asked. The receptionist laughed lightly, like Avery had made a cute joke. "Dr. Wolf oversees every procedure. He maps your anatomy personally and checks the final result. Our clients actually love Brittany. A lot of our influencers request her." That last sentence landed hard. Influencers request her. Avery felt it hook into her ego, her fear of being difficult, her need to belong in rooms like this. She wanted to say no. She wanted to stand up and walk out and tell herself she didn't need any of this. Instead, she heard her own voice say, "Okay." Sienna's gaze sharpened. Avery cut her off with a tight smile. "It's fine." Sienna crossed her arms. It's not fine. It's your eyes. Avery stood. I'm already here. And that was the truth that mattered most. Already here. Already committed. Already filmed a teaser. Already told her audience something big was coming. Already made it part of her story. A door opened on the far side of the lobby. Avery. Avery turned. Brittany Shaw stood in the doorway wearing designer scrubs, her blonde hair pulled into a sleek ponytail that didn't move. She looked like she belonged on Eclipse's Instagram page. Her face was sharp and pretty, her eyelids already lifted into perfect symmetry. She smiled, easy and reassuring. "Hi," Brittany said. "Come on back. We're going to make you look amazing." Avery's mouth went dry. She followed Brittany through a hallway lined with framed photos of before and after clients like awards. Faces changed. Eyes lifted. Smiles widened. The hallway felt like a gallery of transformed identities. The procedure room looked like a catalog spread, stainless steel surfaces, soft, warm lighting. Glass shelves lined with skincare products arranged like luxury perfume. A reclined chair waited in the center like a throne. Avery sat slowly, fingers gripping the armrests. Brittany pulled on gloves with a practiced snap. "So," Brittany said brightly, "we're thinking subtle lift. Soft crease, nothing crazy, just that fresh awake look." Avery nodded, throat tight. "I want it to still look like me." "It will," Brittany said quickly. "Just the upgraded version." Avery forced a small laugh. Her heart was beating too loud. She could hear her own blood. Brittany began cleaning Avery's eyelids with cold antiseptic. The scent hit Avery's nose sharp and sterile, cutting through the perfume-like calm of the lobby. Suddenly it felt real. Not like a reel, not like a before and after. Real. The door opened again. Avery's pulse spiked. Dr. Harrison Wolfe stepped in as if he owned the air. He was handsome in that polished camera-ready way. He didn't smile wide. He smiled like someone who didn't need to. "Avery Collins," he said like he was greeting a colleague, not a patient. "Great to meet you. Big fan of your work?" Avery blinked. You've seen my videos," he nodded once. "Of course. You have a beautiful eye shape. Perfect candidate for a subtle lift." His words poured warmth into her chest. This was what she'd wanted, validation not from comments but from a man in a white coat who looked like the face of safety. Dr. Wolfe picked up a white pencil and began marking Avery's eyelids. His movements were fast, efficient, confident. He spoke while he worked as if he'd said these lines 1,000 times. "We're going to create a crease that enhances your natural contour. Nothing exaggerated. We're not changing you, we're refining you." Avery swallowed. She wanted to ask questions. She wanted to say, "What if something goes wrong? What if I can't close my eyes?" But the room was too clean. The man was too confident. The whole place was designed to make fear look childish. Dr. Wolfe stepped back and nodded. "Looks perfect. Brittany will take it from here." Avery's breath caught. "Wait." But he was already halfway to the door. He turned his head slightly as if remembering something. "You're in great hands," he said. "You'll love your results." And then he was gone. Avery stared at the doorway for a beat too long. Sienna's words echoed in her mind. "It's your eyes." Brittany turned to the tray of instruments with the same bright smile. "Okay." Deep breaths. "This is the easy part." Avery wanted to sit up. She wanted to say, "Actually, no. I want Dr. Wolfe." She wanted to say anything that would stop the next 30 minutes from happening. But she didn't, because she was already here, because she didn't want to seem dramatic, because she had built her entire career on looking confident, because walking away would feel like admitting she wasn't brave enough to keep up. So Avery lay back and she let Brittany inject the numbing agent into her eyelids. The first sting was sharp, deeper than she expected. It wasn't the soft pinch TikTok girls described. It was a burn that spread under her skin like a warning. Avery flinched. Brittany laughed lightly. "Sensitive spot," she said. "Totally normal. Normal." That word again. Avery closed her eyes, at least she thought she did, and let herself drift into that numb, suspended state where time felt distorted. She could hear Brittany's voice narrating her movements like it was a tutorial. "You're doing amazing. Just a little pressure. Almost done." Then Avery heard the sound she hadn't expected. A faint crackle, a low hiss. The smell of something faintly burnt rose into the air. Her stomach turned. She couldn't feel pain, not exactly, but she could feel tugging, pulling, the sensation of skin being manipulated in the ways skin wasn't meant to be. She tried not to move, tried not to think, tried to picture herself in 6 weeks healed and lifted smiling for the camera with eyes that looked expensive. At one point, she heard a small tremble in Brittany's breath. A quick, almost imperceptible hesitation. Avery's heart jumped. "You okay?" Avery murmured through numb lips. Brittany's smile stayed in her voice. "Totally. Just adjusting." Avery didn't know what that meant. She didn't ask. Asking would require admitting fear, and fear was the one thing she couldn't afford. Finally, Brittany stepped back. "Done." Avery sat up slowly, her head spinning. Brittany held up a handheld mirror. Avery stared at herself. Her eyelids were swollen and shiny with ointment taped in place. The bruising had already begun to bloom like dark watercolor beneath the skin. But even through the trauma, she could see it, the new shape, the lifted line, the promise of what it would become. Her eyes looked bigger, sharper. They looked like the filter. Avery's chest filled with relief so sudden it almost made her dizzy. She laughed, weak and breathless. "Oh my God!" Brittany beamed. "Right. You're going to be obsessed once the swelling goes down." Avery nodded. Swelling. That was fine. That was normal. That was what everyone said. Brittany handed her a bag of aftercare supplies ointment gauze instructions printed on thick paper with Eclipse's logo in gold. No heavy exercise. Keep your head elevated, apply ointment, and absolutely no makeup near the eyes for at least a week. Avery barely heard her. She was already reaching for her phone. In the hallway outside the procedure room, there was a full-length mirror with flattering lighting. Avery stood in front of it like she was back at her vanity, like this was just another content moment. She adjusted her sunglasses, lifted them slightly, and hit record. "Okay, guys," she said, voice bright with adrenaline. "I just got my lids done at Eclipse Aesthetics, and are you kidding me? I'm literally shaking. I'm so excited. This is just swelling, but you can already see the lift. I'm obsessed." She angled her face, posed, smiled. The phone buzzed before she could even end the video. Likes, comments. "OMG. Queen, drop the clinic. You look snatched already." Avery exhaled, laughing softly. For the first time in weeks, she felt like she'd won. She walked out into the lobby, sunglasses back on, and the receptionist smiled at her like everything was exactly as it should be. Outside, the sun felt too bright. The world felt too loud. Avery slid back into the Uber and opened her phone again, watching the view count climb. She didn't notice, not right away, that her eyes were already starting to ache beneath the swelling. She didn't notice the dryness beginning like a slow-burning match. She didn't see yet that the most dangerous part of the procedure wasn't what happened in the room. It was what happened after. Avery woke up to a feeling that wasn't pain at first. It was wrongness. A dryness so extreme it felt like her eyes had been left open in a sandstorm exposed to air for hours without blinking. Her body knew it before her brain did. She lay still in the gray dawn light, listening to the hum of the city outside her window, and tried to roll over to sink back into sleep. But the burning followed her into consciousness like a hand on her throat. Her eyelids felt heavy, swollen, as if someone had glued weights to them. She tried to blink to wet the surface of her eyes and realized her lids weren't meeting. The center stayed open. A sliver of vision remained stubbornly alive between swollen skin, and the air stung it like acid. Avery's heart lurched. She jolted upright, wincing as the movement sent blood rushing to her face. Her eyes watered instantly thin, useless tears that pooled and spilled but didn't relieve the burn. She reached for her phone on the nightstand with shaking hands and turned the black screen toward her. In the dim reflection, she could see the swollen bruising around her eyes. She could see the tape edges lifting slightly. She could also see that her eyes weren't closed even though she was trying as hard as she could. "No," she whispered, voice rough with fear. She stumbled into the bathroom the same way she had the night before, feet cold on the tile, stomach twisting. When she flicked on the light, the reflection hit her with a blunt force that made her grip the sink. The swelling had doubled overnight. Purple bruises had bloomed like ink beneath her skin, spreading toward her temples and down her cheeks. Her eyelids looked stretched too tight, the stitches red and angry. The skin around her left eye was shinier than the right, pulled upward as if the lid had been tightened one notch too far. The corners of her eyes were crusted with dried discharge yellow mixed with faint streaks of blood. Avery stared and tried to close her eyes again. Her lids quivered. They lowered. They stopped short. A thin line of exposed eye stared back at her. Her throat closed. A noise escaped her, half gasp, half sob. She pressed her fingertips gently to the swelling as if pushing down could force the lids to meet. It didn't. It only made the burn flare, hotter, sharper, like someone had poured alcohol over an open wound. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She flinched at the sound and looked down. TikTok had been busy while she slept. "Your video is gaining traction." New comment. "Girl, you look so snatched already." New comment. "That clinic is magical." New comment. "How are you already healed?" Avery's hands shook harder. The comments didn't match what she was seeing. The internet was praising a version of her that was falling apart in real time. She grabbed the aftercare bag from Eclipse and dumped it onto the counter. A thick card slid out with gold lettering. "Mild swelling and bruising is normal. Dryness is normal. Tightness is normal." Avery clung to the word normal like it was a life raft. Normal meant safe. Normal meant she wasn't the one rare case. Normal meant she could keep posting. Normal meant she wouldn't lose everything. She found the small tube of ointment and squeezed it onto her finger. The texture was thick, greasy. She smeared it along the edge of her lids and around the stitches. It helped for maybe 5 seconds. Then the burn crawled back deeper and hungrier. Avery sat on the edge of the bathtub and stared at herself, eyes watering, lips trembling. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, it's just swelling." But her body didn't believe her. She called Eclipse. The receptionist answered on the third ring voice, bright upbeat, like Avery was calling to schedule a facial, not to report that her eyes wouldn't close. "Eclipse. Aesthetics. This is Lauren," the woman chirped. "How can I help you today?" Avery tried to keep her voice steady. "Hi, this is Avery Collins. I had an upper lid procedure yesterday with Brittany. I'm having a lot of dryness and I can't fully close my eyes." There was a pause. Not long enough to be alarming, but long enough to feel rehearsed. Then Lauren's tone stayed exactly the same. "Oh, yes, Avery. So, dryness and tightness are totally normal for the first few days, especially right after surgery. Your eyelids are swollen and the tissue is adjusting." Avery's chest tightened. "But I literally can't close them. There's a gap." "Totally normal," Lauren repeated as if saying it enough times would make it true. "The swelling makes it hard for the lids to meet. Just keep applying ointment and use the cooling compress. Sleep elevated. It will settle." Avery swallowed. "It burns. And there's discharge." "Discharge can happen from irritation," Lauren said. "Nothing to worry about unless you have a fever or severe pain, but what you're describing sounds like a normal healing process." Avery's eyes stung so hard she had to squeeze her jaw shut to keep from crying. "So what am I supposed to do?" "Stay hydrated. Rest and keep up with the ointment," Lauren said. Too cheerful. "If it still feels off by Monday, we can schedule you for a follow-up. Dr. Wolf can take a look. But right now, the best thing is to let your body do what it needs to do. Monday." The word hit Avery like a shove. "It's Saturday," Avery said, voice rising. "I can't wait until Monday if I can't close my eyes." Lauren's smile became audible. "I totally understand. You're just anxious because it's fresh. Trust the process. You're going to look amazing." Avery stared at the wall phone pressed to her ear and felt something inside her crack. Trust the process. She had trusted it. She had trusted the marble floors, the champagne, the gold lettering, the way they said her name like she belonged there. She had trusted the idea that expensive meant safe. Now her eyes were burning out of her skull and the person on the phone was telling her to drink water. Avery hung up without saying goodbye. She stood in the bathroom, phone in one hand, ointment tube in the other, and watched the bruise beneath her left eye darken as if it was still spreading. Her vision blurred. Not from tears this time, but from something else, like her eyes were drying faster than her body could keep up. She blinked again, and each blink felt like paper scraping glass. Avery didn't want to overreact. She didn't want to be dramatic. She didn't want to be the girl who called 911 over swelling. But she remembered Sienna's voice. "It's your eyes." She texted Sienna with shaking thumbs. "Can you come over? Please, something's wrong." Sienna responded in under a minute. "On my way. Don't touch anything, I'm coming." Avery dropped the phone onto the counter and slid down the wall onto the bathroom floor. She sat there with her knees pulled to her chest and stared at the tile while the burn ate at her eyes. The apartment was quiet except for the faint buzz of her phone as notifications continued to roll in. Every vibration felt like the internet tapping her shoulder demanding she stay present, stay pretty, stay relevant. Avery wanted to scream. Instead, she whispered, "Please," to no one. When Sienna arrived, she didn't knock politely. She burst through the door like an emergency. Avery heard her footsteps, the quick slam of the front door, the sound of keys tossed onto the counter. "Avery," Sienna called. "Where are you?" "In here," Avery said, and her voice came out thin, distorted by swelling. Sienna appeared in this bathroom doorway and froze. "Oh my God," Sienna breathed. Avery didn't move. She looked up at her friend and saw horror flash across Sienna's face before she tried to hide it. That attempt was what shattered Avery. What Avery whispered. "Is it bad?" Sienna stepped closer slowly, as if she was afraid sudden movement might break something. She crouched beside Avery and leaned in. "Avery, your eyes." Sienna swallowed hard. "You can't close them. I told you." Sienna's jaw clenched. "And there's yellow. Discharge. And your left lid looks like it's pulling too tight." Avery's throat tightened. "They said it's normal." Sienna's voice sharpened. "They say everything is normal until it isn't. You need to go to the ER. Avery shook her head weakly. "I can't. People will see me." Sienna grabbed Avery's hands. "Avery, you're not talking about people seeing you. You're talking about you seeing it all. Do you understand me?" Avery stared at her friend. The words didn't fully land until Sienna repeated them. "You could lose your vision." The room tilted. Avery felt her stomach drop, cold sweat breaking along her spine. "No," Avery whispered. "No, no, no." Sienna stood quickly. "Get your hoodie, sunglasses. We're going now." Avery wanted to protest. She wanted to argue. She wanted to stay in her apartment where the only eyes on her were her own reflection. But the burn was getting worse by the minute. Her vision was smearing at the edges like she was looking through oil. She stood on shaking legs and pulled on a hoodie, the fabric rough against her tender skin. She shoved sunglasses over her swollen eyes even though it hurt. When Sienna guided her out the door, Avery kept her head down as if she could hide from the universe by refusing to meet its gaze. The ER at Cedars-Sinai was too bright, too loud. The fluorescent lights cut into Avery's vision like knives. The air smelled like antiseptic and stale coffee. Avery sat hunched in a wheelchair, hood up, sunglasses on, hands clenched in her lap. A nurse approached and asked routine questions. When Avery lifted the sunglasses for a second, the nurse's expression shifted. Within seconds, Avery was behind a curtain in a smaller room, the atmosphere tightening. People moved faster. Voices lowered. Someone said, "Ophthalmology consult," and Avery's heart started pounding again. She heard Sienna explaining everything with a precision Avery couldn't manage. "Upper lid surgery, IHA. Yesterday at Eclipse Aesthetics. Assistant surgeon. She can't close her eyes. Burning pain. Discharge. Vision blurry." Avery tried to speak, but her lips didn't shape words correctly. Her eyes were too dry. Her throat was too tight. A new figure entered the room, older than the clinic staff, wearing scrubs instead of designer coats. Calm. Focused. The kind of calm that made Avery feel like maybe finally someone was taking this seriously. "Hi, Avery," he said gently. "I'm Dr. Daniel Patel. I'm going to take a look at your eyes." Avery nodded barely. Dr. Patel pulled a small light from his pocket and leaned in. "I know this is uncomfortable," he said. "Try to stay still." He examined her eyelids, first gloved fingers touching the swelling with careful precision. Then he asked her to blink. She tried. The lids stopped short again, leaving the eye exposed. Dr. Patel's face didn't change dramatically, but his focus sharpened. "Do you feel this?" he asked, touching near the surface of her cornea with a soft instrument. Avery flinched. "Yes? It burns." He touched another spot. Here, Avery hesitated. "Less." Dr. Patel leaned back. "Okay." Sienna stepped forward, voice tight. "What is it?" Dr. Patel took a breath. His tone was calm, but the weight of his words changed the air. "You have lagophthalmos," he said. "Your eyelids can't close completely." Avery blinked, confused by the term, but she understood the meaning. Doctor. Patel continued. "When the eyelids don't close, the cornea stays exposed to air. It dries out. It becomes inflamed. You're developing exposure keratitis, and I'm concerned about ulceration." Sienna's eyes widened. "Ulceration? Like an ulcer on the eye?" Dr. Patel nodded. And if it progresses, it can become infected. That can cause permanent scarring and vision loss." Avery's vision blurred again. She couldn't tell if it was tears or terror. "Can you fix it?" she whispered. Dr. Patel's expression softened, but he didn't lie. "We can treat it. We can protect your cornea. But timing matters. The longer your eye stays exposed, the higher the risk." Avery felt heat rise in her face, not from swelling now, but from shame. She had waited. She had listened to a receptionist. She had trusted an Instagram feed. While her eyes were drying out, she had been reading comments about how snatched she looked. Sienna's voice broke through, urgent. "What do we do, doctor?" Patel glanced toward the tray being rolled into the room. "We're going to start with aggressive lubrication and antibiotic drops. But because your lids aren't closing enough to protect your cornea, we may need to perform a temporary tarsor hafi." Avery stared at him. "What is that?" Dr. Patel didn't flinch. "We partially stitch the eyelids closed. Temporarily. It helps the surface heal and prevents further exposure." Avery's stomach lurched. Her hands trembled. "You're going to stitch my eye shut?" Dr. Patel met her gaze. "Partially. And only because I'd rather stitch it shut for a few weeks than have you lose vision permanently." Avery's breath hitched. The world seemed suddenly cruel and simple. Either she protected her eye or she protected her image, and one of those things could be replaced. The other couldn't. She swallowed, tasting fear and regret. "Do it," she whispered. Sienna squeezed her hand so tightly Avery felt it through the numbness. Dr. Patel nodded. "Okay," he said. "This will sting, but we're going to take care of you." As the nurse prepared the tray and the antiseptic smell filled the small room, Avery stared at the ceiling lights above her. They blurred into halos, soft circles of brightness that reminded her of ring lights of cameras of the glow she used to chase. Only now she understood the difference. Ring lights could turn off. Her eyes couldn't. Avery didn't remember the exact moment Dr. Patel began. She remembered the smell, first sharp alcohol swiped across swollen skin, the cold sting that made her flinch. She remembered the nurse's voice telling her to keep breathing, the way Sienna's fingers threaded through hers like a lifeline. And then she remembered the pressure, the tug, the strange, intimate horror of feeling her eyelids being guided toward a closed position her own body couldn't achieve. It wasn't pain, like a cut. It was pain, like consequence heat and sting. And the knowledge that this wasn't glamorous, this wasn't content, this wasn't a transformation video. This was protection. This was survival. Avery squeezed her eyes shut as best she could while the doctor worked, and for the first time in days she felt something close to relief, darkness. Not the comforting kind, not the kind you chose when you turned off your phone and crawled into bed, but the kind that arrived because your body was being forced into rest. When Dr. Patel stepped back, his voice was calm. "It's temporary," he said. "We'll monitor you closely. The cornea needs time. The goal is to prevent ulceration and infection. You did the right thing coming in." Avery nodded, but the truth was she didn't feel like she'd done anything right. She felt like she'd arrived at the hospital barely in time, like someone who ran from a fire after the smoke had already filled the room. Sienna looked at Avery with wet eyes. "You're okay," she whispered. "You're okay." Avery tried to speak to say thank you, but her throat tightened and her mouth only made a small sound. She turned her head slightly and saw her reflection in the black screen of her phone, half her face hidden under gauze, and swelling one eye partially stitched shut, the other red and raw. The sight hit her like a punch. This wasn't the face she'd posted. This wasn't the face the comment section had praised. This was a face that belonged to a patient. Her phone buzzed again. She didn't have to see the screen to know what it was: TikTok, Instagram, brand emails, the world still knocking, still demanding her to be present. In the hospital room under fluorescent lights, Avery realized something colder than fear. The internet didn't know she was bleeding. It didn't care if she could close her eyes. It would keep scrolling whether she lived or disappeared. That night, she went home with her eye taped and medicated and aching. Sienna drove her one hand on the steering wheel, the other hovering near Avery like she could physically hold her together. Avery sat in the passenger seat with sunglasses covering her bandaged face, chin tucked down, hoodie pulled up so tight she could barely breathe. When she reached her apartment, she moved like a ghost. She didn't turn on the overhead lights. She didn't look in the mirror. She went straight to her bed and sat on the edge with her hands limp in her lap. Her phone lay beside her, fully charged, vibrating. The first email came before she could stop herself from checking. "Hey, Avery, just checking in on the sponsored reel. We noticed a delay. Please confirm your upload schedule." Then another. "Due to project timelines, we'll be reallocating budget this quarter. Thank you for your time." Then the worst one. The one written in language so polite it felt like cruelty. "Given the visual nature of this campaign, we've decided to pause collaboration until further notice." Avery stared at that line until the words blurred. Visual nature. Her career reduced to lighting and angles, and now her face, her eyes were no longer reliable. She tossed the phone onto the sheets like it burned. Days passed in a hazy loop of ointment and painkillers and half-sleep. Avery learned that rest wasn't restful when your body was healing. Her eye stung constantly, and the swelling made her face feel foreign, as if her skin belonged to someone else. Every morning she woke up and reached for her phone out of habit, then remembered she couldn't post. She couldn't even open her eyes fully without burning. On the third day she tried to unlock her phone with Face ID. The screen flashed. Face not recognized. Avery tried again and again. Her heart started pounding, not because she needed access to the phone, but because the rejection felt personal, final. Sienna watched silent and then whispered, "Oh, Avery." Avery's laugh came out broken. "Even my phone doesn't know who I am anymore." She grabbed the phone and typed in her passcode with shaking fingers. When the home screen appeared, she opened TikTok without thinking. Her last video, her hallway glow-up, was still there. Her taped eyelids, her excited voice, the caption with Eclipse's tag, and a trending audio. The video sat in her feed like a cruel snapshot of innocence. The comments had multiplied. At first, they were still excited. "Update us. Can't wait to see the healed results." "Drop the surgeon." Then the tone began to shift. She probably botched herself. "This is why you don't mess with your face." Karma for being fake. "Bet she's hiding because it looks bad." Avery's body went cold. She scrolled, unable to stop each comment landing like a slap. She clicked her DMs, desperate for something softer, something human. A message from a teenage girl popped up at the top. "I was going to get my eyelids done when I turn 18. Now I'm scared. Are you okay?" Another. I loved your confidence. Please don't disappear. Another crueler. Show your eyes. We deserve to know. You're public. Avery dropped the phone and covered her face with both hands. Even the pressure of her palms made her flinch because her skin hurt, because her stitches pulled, because everything was too much. She wanted to scream, but screaming would shake her face, and shaking her face would hurt. Sienna sat beside her quiet present. You don't have to read that, she said gently. Avery's voice cracked. But I can't stop. Sienna didn't answer because she knew the truth. The addiction wasn't to content. It was to being seen. That night, after Avery fell into a fitful sleep, Sienna stayed awake on the couch with her laptop open, the glow of the screen turning her face pale. She typed Eclipse Aesthetics complication into Google. Then, Dr. Harrison Wolf lawsuit. Then, Brittany Shaw assistant surgeon credentials. The first page of results was clean. Too clean. The clinic's SEO was strong. The reviews glowing the news articles praising Dr. Wolf's artistry. It felt like searching for dirt on a polished marble floor. But Sienna was stubborn. She dug deeper, scrolling past page 1, page 2, past sponsored results and clinic press releases. She added words like botched and infection and corneal damage. She opened Reddit threads with titles that looked like whispers. Eclipse ruined my eyelids. I can't close my eyes after surgery. They told me to wait until Monday. Her stomach dropped when she saw that phrase repeated. Wait until Monday. Sienna clicked. A woman wrote that she'd had an upper lid procedure at Eclipse, experienced extreme dryness and pain, and was reassured it was normal. She waited. By the time she went to urgent care, her cornea had ulcerated. She described the scar tissue, the blurred vision that never fully returned the way the clinic blamed her for not following aftercare properly. The username was anonymous, but the details were painfully specific. Sienna's hands shook. She kept scrolling. Another thread, another woman, another story, the same lobby, the same coconut water, the same script. You're in amazing hands. Normal swelling. Wait until Monday. Sienna felt nausea rise in her throat. This wasn't a one-off accident. This was a pattern. And the next day, Sienna made a throwaway account and messaged the woman from the thread. I have a friend who's going through this right now. Please, can we talk? Hours later, a response appeared. Yes, but be careful. They threatened me with legal action. Sienna read the message 3 times, her chest tightening. Legal action. The clinic wasn't just injuring people, it was silencing them. 2 days later, she met the woman in a coffee shop in Santa Monica, an unremarkable place with wooden chairs and sunlight that made everything feel normal. The woman wore sunglasses inside. Her name, she said, was Mira Thompson. Mira was older than Avery, maybe early 30s, and there was something guarded about her posture, like someone who had been burned and learned to stand further from the flame. Sienna sat across from her, nervous. Thank you for meeting me. Mira's lips pressed into a tight line. I'm meeting you because I wish someone had warned me. Sienna swallowed. What happened to you? Mira lifted her sunglasses slightly. Her eyes weren't swollen anymore, but one eyelid sat uneven, pulled tight. Her eye looked slightly duller, as if light didn't reflect in it the same way. I did the fox eye lift, Mira said quietly. They told me it was routine. Dr. Wolf mapped my face. Brittany did the procedure. I woke up, burning. I couldn't close my eyes. I called Eclipse and they said it was normal. They told me to wait until Monday. Her voice shook on the last word, anger mixing with grief. I waited, she continued. By Monday, my cornea was damaged. I went to the ER. The doctor said if I had come in sooner, it might have healed fully, but I didn't know, because they told me I was being dramatic. Sienna's throat tightened. Did you? Sue them, Mira laughed without humor. I tried. They sent me a letter. Cease and desist. They told me if I spoke publicly, they'd ruin me, and I believed them. Sienna stared. The world felt suddenly sharper, uglier. Mira leaned forward. Listen to me. Your friend is not the first, and she won't be the last unless someone breaks the silence. Sienna felt her pulse pound. Avery. She's terrified. Her career is her face. Mira's gaze softened. Then, tell her this. They'll take her face anyway in their own way if she stays quiet. At least if she speaks, she gets to choose what it means. Sienna left the coffee shop with her hands shaking. She drove back to Avery's apartment like she was carrying a bomb. Avery was in the kitchen when Sienna arrived, hood up one eye, taped, the other half open and bloodshot. She was pushing scrambled eggs around a plate like the food had insulted her. Sienna didn't sit down. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, like she was holding herself together with anger. "Avery," she said. Avery didn't look up. "If you're going to tell me to stop reading comments, don't." Sienna's voice broke through the haze. "You're not the only one." Avery froze. Slowly, she lifted her head. "What?" Sienna walked closer and slid her laptop onto the table. "I found threads, people talking about Eclipse, about Dr. Wolf, about Brittany. I met someone today. Mira Thompson." Avery's throat tightened. "Who?" "A woman who had the same procedure Sienna said. Same clinic, same assistant, same complication, same wait until Monday." Avery stared unblinking. What happened to her? Sienna hesitated, then said it anyway because truth mattered more than comfort now. She lost part of her vision. The silence that followed wasn't quiet. It was roaring. Avery's hands curled into fists. Her chest rose and fell too fast. Tears slid down her cheeks, but they didn't fall like sadness. They fell like rage. They knew, Avery whispered. Sienna nodded. They knew enough to have a script. Avery's breathing turned sharp. "And they still let me. They still took your money," Sienna finished softly. "They still smiled at you and handed you coconut water." Avery's jaw clenched so hard her face trembled. She had been afraid for days, afraid of pain, afraid of scarring, afraid of losing her brand. But now, for the first time, fear shifted into something else, something stronger. Anger. That evening, Elaine Collins arrived on the first flight she could book. Avery heard the knock at the door and felt her stomach twist because she knew. Only her mother knocked that gently. When Avery opened the door, Elaine's face crumpled instantly. She stared at Avery's swollen eye, the gauze, the bruises, the partial stitches. She covered her mouth with one hand. "Oh, Avery," she whispered, as if saying her daughter's name might hold her together. Avery tried to smile, but the movement pulled at her swelling and made her flinch. Elaine stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Avery carefully like she was hugging something fragile. Avery stood still for a second, then collapsed into her mother's shoulder, shaking. "I just wanted to fix one thing," Avery whispered. "Just one thing." Elaine pulled back and looked at her with wet eyes. "You were perfect." Avery's laugh was sharp bitter. "Perfect doesn't trend anymore." Elaine didn't respond right away. Instead, she reached into her purse and pulled out a photo creased and worn from being carried. She handed it to Avery. Avery stared at the picture. It was her at 7 years old, missing 2 front teeth cheeks, sticky with ice cream eyes squinted into crescent moons because she was laughing so hard. Her eyes looked bright alive, unedited. "You remember this?" Elaine asked softly. Avery's throat tightened. "Disneyland." Elaine nodded. "You cried when I tried to frame it. You said your eyes looked weird. You said you wanted to look like the girls on TV." Avery felt the memory slam into her chest. She hadn't thought about that moment in years, but suddenly she was 7 again, staring at her own face with a strange kind of disgust she didn't know how to name. Elaine's voice shook. "I thought you grew out of that." Avery's eyes filled. "I didn't," she whispered. "I just learned how to hide it better." Elaine sat beside her on the couch and took Avery's hand. "Listen to me," she said. "You don't belong to them. Not to the comments, not to the trends, not to those clinics. You belong to you." Avery stared down at her mother's fingers wrapped around hers and felt something inside her loosen a knot of shame unraveling just enough for her to breathe. Later that night, when the apartment was quiet and the city lights flickered outside the window, Avery sat in front of her phone with the ring light turned off. No flattering angle, no soundtrack, no makeup, just her face, bruised and swollen and real. Sienna sat behind the camera, silent. Elaine watched from the couch, her hands clenched around a mug of tea like an anchor. Avery stared at herself on the screen. For a moment, she wanted to throw the phone across the room. She wanted to disappear. She wanted to pretend none of this had happened. But Mira's words echoed in her mind. "They'll take your face anyway." Avery hit record. The red dot appeared small and unforgiving. "Hi, Avery," said voice quiet, rough. "It's been a while." She swallowed. Her eye burned. Her throat tightened. "I know people have been asking where I've been," she continued. "And I disappeared without explaining. I'm sorry." She paused, forcing herself to breathe. "A week ago, I got eyelid surgery. I got it because I thought it would make me look better on camera. I got it because it was trending. I got it because I thought Instagram was research." Her voice trembled, but she didn't stop. The clinic looked legit. It was beautiful. Celebrities tagged them. The surgeon, Dr. Harrison Wolfe, had a huge following. I thought it was safe. Avery blinked slowly, her remaining eye shimmering with tears. But it wasn't. Sienna's breath caught behind the camera. Avery continued, her voice gaining strength as truth poured through her. "I wasn't told that the person performing my procedure was not the surgeon I thought I was booking. I wasn't told who was holding the blade. I signed forms I didn't understand. And when something went wrong, they told me it was normal. They told me to wait until Monday." Her jaw clenched. Anger flickered under her words like a flame. "I couldn't close my eyes," she said. "I was developing damage to my cornea. I had to go to the ER. I almost lost my vision. They had to stitch my eyelid partially shut to protect my eye." Avery inhaled sharply, steadying herself. "I'm healing," she said, "but it's not going to look the same. It's not going to feel the same. And I'm not saying this for sympathy. I'm saying it because I wish someone had said it to me." She lifted the phone slightly and showed a close-up of her eye, bruising stitches swelling. No filter, no softness, no hiding. "This is what a trend can cost," Avery whispered. Then she looked straight into the lens. "No trend is worth your eyes." She ended the recording and stared at the screen, her thumb hovering over the post button. Her heart pounded like she was about to jump off a cliff. Sienna leaned forward. "Whatever happens," she said softly, "I'm here." Avery pressed publish. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the notifications began to hit like rain. The view count climbed. Comments poured in. Some were furious. "Sue them. This is malpractice. This happened to my cousin." Some were cruel. "She's clout chasing. You chose this. Stop playing victim." But underneath the noise, there were quieter voices, the ones Avery hadn't expected. "I was scheduled for surgery next week. I canceled. Thank you for telling the truth. I thought I was the only one." Avery stared at that last one until her vision blurred. The next morning, Eclipse Aesthetics posted a statement. "We take patient safety seriously. Every procedure is performed to the highest standards. Individual outcomes vary, and we do not comment on private medical information." A few hours later, Avery received an email from Legal Counsel Eclipse Aesthetics. The subject line read, "Cease and desist." Her stomach dropped as she opened it. The letter was formal cold, accusing her of defamation, demanding she remove the video, threatening legal remedies if she continued speaking. Sienna read it over Avery's shoulder, her face hardening. "Of course," she said. "Of course they do this." Avery's hands shook. For a second, she wanted to delete everything. She wanted to retreat to protect what little was left of her career, to stop the storm. Then, another message arrived, this time from a number Avery didn't recognize. Avery stared. The text was short, but it hit like a punch. "This is Brittany Shaw. Please don't post this. But I need to say I'm sorry. I didn't want it to happen like this." Avery's chest tightened. She read it again. Brittany wrote again. "They told me you'd be fine. They said it was normal. They said you just needed time. I didn't know it would get to the ER. I didn't know you couldn't close your eyes. I swear I didn't want to hurt you." Avery stared at the screen, breath shallow. The words weren't an excuse. They were a confession, a crack in the polished marble wall. Sienna leaned closer, eyes widening. "That's evidence," she whispered. Avery felt something strange pity and fury braided together. Brittany wasn't Dr. Wolfe. Brittany wasn't the clinic's glossy PR. Brittany was a person who had been handed a blade and told to perform. She was responsible, yes, but she was also part of something bigger. Avery typed back with trembling fingers. "Did they tell you to tell me to wait until Monday?" There was a long pause. Then Brittany replied, "Yes." Avery's breath caught. She stared at that one word until her vision blurred. "Yes." Sienna exhaled sharply. "They have a script," she said, voice shaking with anger. "They have a system." Avery sat back, her heart pounding. She wasn't just a girl who made a bad decision. She was a girl who had been marketed to rushed, reassured, silenced. She was a case study in what happened when beauty became a machine. The video Avery posted hit 2 million views in a week. Brands didn't come back, not right away. Some people unfollowed. Some stayed. Some only watched for drama. But something else happened. Something Avery hadn't expected. Women started telling their stories. The comment section filled with confessions. Eyelid scars, botched injectables, infections. Clinics that looked like luxury hotels and treated complications like inconveniences. Avery read them late at night with her phone dimmed low, her eye protected, her heart heavy. She saved screenshots. She created a folder named Proof, and she created another folder named Worth It. The first screenshot in that folder was a comment from a girl she didn't know. "I was going to do it this weekend. I canceled because of you. Thank you." Avery stared at that comment for a long time, longer than she'd stared at any brand email, any hate comment, any trending number. Sienna sat beside her on the couch watching. "You just saved someone," she said softly. Avery's throat tightened. "I didn't mean to become this." Sienna shook her head. "Maybe you were always going to." 2 weeks later, Avery posted again. No ring light, no music, no glam shelf in the background, just her in plain daylight hair pulled back, face bare. One eyelid still healing, the crease uneven, the scar thin and pink. "Let's talk about beauty safely," she said into the camera. She didn't make it about trauma. She made it about truth. She explained consent forms, red flags. Why you should verify credentials. Why you should never accept being told to wait when something feels wrong. She posted resources. She linked medical organizations. She told people the one sentence she wished she'd had tattooed on her mind: Instagram isn't research. Dr. Daniel Patel agreed to appear in her second video. He sat across from Avery in a softly lit room, calm and professional, explaining legophthalmos in simple words. "If you remove too much skin," he said, "it's like pulling your curtains down and realizing they won't meet anymore. Eyelids are the same. They protect the eye, and when they can't do that, the cornea suffers." Avery asked him the question that had haunted her. "Will I ever look like myself again?" Dr. Patel didn't lie. He smiled gently, but his honesty was the kind that felt like kindness. "No," he said. "You'll look like someone who learned, and that version of you might be even stronger." The new videos didn't go viral the way her makeup hauls had. They didn't land on the For You page with sparkly filters, but they mattered, and the comments changed. "This is what I needed. I canceled my appointment. Thank you for saying what no one says. Following for actual education." One afternoon, Avery stepped outside without sunglasses for the first time since the surgery. The sun was bright, but she didn't flinch as much anymore. The air smelled like Los Angeles warm asphalt jasmine coffee from a nearby cafe. She walked down the street with Sienna beside her, the city moving around them like nothing had happened. People passed. No one screamed. No one pointed. Life kept going. At the corner, a young girl approached cautiously, clutching her phone like it was both shield and offering. "Are you Avery Collins?" the girl asked. Voice small, Avery's heart tightened. She forced herself not to pull back. "Yeah," she said softly. "That's me." The girl's eyes filled with tears. I just wanted to say, I was scheduled for eyelid surgery. I was going to do it because everyone on TikTok does it. But I saw your video, and I canceled. Avery stared at her. The girl looked so young, so familiar. Like Avery at 17 watching beauty tutorials and believing perfection was a door she could walk through if she just changed enough. The girl smiled shakily. Thank you. Avery's throat tightened. For a moment she couldn't speak. Then she reached out and touched the girl's shoulder gently, careful as if she was touching something sacred. I'm glad you're safe, Avery said. The girl nodded and stepped back, wiping her tears. No trend is worth your eyes, she whispered, as if repeating a prayer. Avery watched her walk away, her chest swelling with something that wasn't pride, not exactly. Something quieter, something like peace. Sienna leaned in. Worth it, she asked softly. Avery looked toward the street, toward the bright afternoon, toward the world that she could still see. She smiled, uneven, faint, real. Worth it, she whispered. And, for the first time since that night in the bathroom, Avery felt her eyelids flutter closed completely for a brief second, not from swelling, not from stitches, but from choice. Just long enough to rest. Just long enough to remember that she didn't have to be a filter to be seen.